On vacay, my friend who's in an open relationship convinced me to spend the night W/a local from the club. Hey Reddit, I'm not a frequent user of this app, but I've seen it popping up on TikTok a lot lately, so I figured I'd give it a shot. I'm reaching out here because I've made a massive mistake, and I desperately need advice on how to fix it. I cheated on my husband, and now I am really with the whole aftermath. I'm trying to find a way to earn his forgiveness, and I wonder if there is a way we can get through this. Let me introduce myself. I'm Naomi, 29 years old, and my husband is Matt, who's 30. We've been married for a few months and have two amazing boys, aged 5 and 3. Matt and I go way back. We grew up as neighbors, became each other's firsts, and have been inseparable ever since. Our marriage has been mostly smooth sailing, filled with love, regular date nights. Our communication was top-notch. Matt is an amazing parent, and the kids are even closer to him than they are to me. They run first to Matt to tell him anything before they come to me. Matt also has an amazing job that pays so well that I can be a stay-at-home mom without worries. I dropped out and didn't even graduate college, plus I really love the fact that I can stay home and take care of my kids. However, like any relationship, we have our challenges. The biggest hurdle we face is our differing views on intimacy. Matt is quite conservative and strictly monogamous. He doesn't want to experiment and isn't interested at all, while I've always been more open-minded and curious about exploring different aspects of our relationship, especially in the bedroom. This difference in perspective has led to arguments and moments of doubts a lot of times. And I know y'all are going to ask why I didn't just leave if we were sexually incompatible. It's because I loved Matt too much. He went along with whatever I said and was even willing to let me stay home and never work. In fact, one particularly heated argument almost drove us apart, but we managed to patch things up. I love Matt deeply, and despite our differences, I've always believed we could work through anything together. But recently, I found myself in a situation that I deeply regret, a moment of weakness that has shaken the foundation of my marriage. Now let me tell you about my friend. We met back in college and hit it off right away. Over the years, our bond grew stronger, and we stayed in close contact, catching up whenever we could. There was always something intriguing about her life that drew me in, something I couldn't help but envy. You see, my friend was in an open relationship. She talked about it openly, sharing how it had transformed her marriage for the better. According to her, the openness and honesty in their relationship had breathed new life into their love, making them happier and more connected than ever before. I couldn't help but be curious about what it was like to live in such a dynamic and liberating relationship. However, deep down, I knew that bringing up the topic with Matt would be like opening a can of worms. He had always been clear about his views on monogamy, and the idea of an open relationship was something he wouldn't even entertain. It was a huge contrast to my friend's experience, and while I admired her openness, I also knew that it wasn't something I could pursue in my own marriage. As time went on, a subtle sense of resentment started to grow within me. It wasn't directed at my friend or her lifestyle, but rather at the difference between her freedom and my perceived lack of it. The more she shared about her open relationship, the more I couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to have that kind of freedom and openness in my own life. Whenever I mustered the courage to bring up the topic with Matt, hoping for a discussion or at least some understanding, his response was always the same. He would shut down the conversation immediately, emphasizing that if I desired an open relationship so fervently, he would be willing to divorce me so that I could pursue happiness on my terms. It was a blunt and final statement that always left me feeling silenced and unheard. On one hand, I yearned for more freedom and exploration, but on the other hand, I cherished my marriage and didn't want to jeopardize it for my personal desires. As the desire for a more open relationship grew stronger within me, I found myself slowly withdrawing from Matt. It was a subtle but noticeable shift in our dynamics. There was this quiet distance between us. Our intimacy dwindled, and I became increasingly harsh, irritable, and rude. I would often chalk it to exhaustion from taking care of our children. I wanted to push Matt to confront the issue, to make him see how important this was to me, but his stubbornness remained impenetrable. No matter how I approached the topic or hinted at my feelings, nothing seemed to sway him. One aspect that also fueled my resentment was the difference in breaks between us. Matt had moments of rest from parenting responsibilities, whether it was through work or other activities, while I felt constantly tethered to the kids. Even when our oldest started preschool, I still had our youngest with me most of the time. Despite Matt's help and support when he returned from work, taking the kids off my hands and encouraging me to relax, the feeling of being overwhelmed and underappreciated still remained there. The fact that the children seemed closer to Matt also added another layer to my frustration. I do have to admit, though, that Matt is a good father and partner in many ways. He took on household tasks, cooked, cleaned, and supported me emotionally. However, when you start resenting someone because of one issue, it bleeds into everything else. Well, as my feeling of being tired and underappreciated continued to weigh heavily on me, I began dropping hints to Matt about my struggles. One of my suggestions was getting a nanny to help with the kids, because I was hoping it would reduce some of the pressure I felt. However, Matt's response was not what I expected. He adamantly refused. He argued that having a nanny would defeat the purpose of me being a stay-at-home mom. In his view, if we had a nanny, it would be more logical for me to be in the workforce. This refusal only added to my frustration. I felt like my needs and well-being weren't being prioritized. I complained constantly about being exhausted, about not having enough time for myself, and about feeling overwhelmed with the kids. Matt made efforts to mend our relationship. He tried to be even more involved with the children and even took on additional tasks around the house. But despite his attempts at reconciliation, I couldn't shake off the resentment that I still had over his refusal to consider an open relationship. To be clear, I appreciated Matt's efforts. I wasn't ungrateful or anything. But his efforts fell short in my eyes. So as my frustrations with Matt persisted, the opportunity for a vacation came as a beacon of relief. It was supposed to be my friend and her partner, but she mentioned that her partner couldn't join due to a family emergency, leaving the trip open for just the two of us. I was eager to jump on board. Without hesitation, I agreed to cover my own expenses and asked her to send me all the details. Looking back, I realized I should have discussed it with Matt first, especially considering I didn't have the financial means to fund such a trip on my own. However, at that moment, I was so emotionally drained and disenchanted with our relationship that I felt I deserved this vacation. It was a chance for me to escape everything and everyone and enjoy some time away from the constant pressures and tensions at home. The idea of convincing Matt to let me go on the trip started to form in my mind. I knew it wouldn't be easy given our recent, struggles and disagreements, but I was determined to make it happen. Because I genuinely thought a change of scenery and some time away would help reduce the strain in our marriage. When I brought up the vacation to Matt, he wasn't thrilled. He pointed out that it was only halfway through the year and questioned the timing. I told him I was exhausted and really needed a break, especially since I had already committed to my friend. Matt insisted that I should have discussed it with him first, like most couples do. He also worried about his workload due to a new project at work. Matt, in his usual practical manner, argued that I shouldn't have agreed without discussing it with him first, as couples typically do. He also raised concerns about the logistics, asking if I planned to take the kids along. Of course, I told him that the kids wouldn't be coming with me, and he expressed his worry about his new project at work, which meant he would be incredibly busy during the time of the trip. At this point, I was already getting annoyed and tired of the conversation, so I pushed back and urged him to find a solution. I suggested that our families could step in to watch the kids or that he could hire a nanny for the duration of the vacation. I made it clear to Matt that the reason I was bringing up the vacation was because I didn't have the funds to cover it myself, and if he didn't agree to it, I would hold it against him and never forgive him. Matt finally gave in, but I could tell it wasn't easy for him. His agreement was more out of concern for me than genuine excitement about the trip. I was beyond excited about the upcoming vacation. While Matt usually planned our family vacations towards the end of the year, this trip would be different. It fell in the middle of the year, and most importantly, it was just for my friend and me, no kids or family obligations. It was a chance for me to unwind and have some much-needed time for myself. My friend sent me all the details. Since Matt was the one funding my part of the trip, I forwarded all the information to him. It felt like a small victory, finally having something just for me after months of feeling overwhelmed and stuck in the routine of being a stay-at-home mom. The day I was to go on vacation with my friend finally arrived, and I was bursting with excitement. I woke up extra early so as to ensure that I had enough time to get ready and reach the airport without any rush. However, this also meant that Matt had to wake up earlier than usual to drive me to the airport. Despite his initial reluctance due to the early hour, he understood how important this trip was for me and agreed to make the effort. Getting the kids ready at such an early hour wasn't easy either. I had suggested to Matt to leave them at home to sleep in while he drove me to the airport, but he refused and said he didn't want the kids waking up and not meeting anyone at home. Matt can be a bit of an overprotective dad. The kids were sleepy and groggy, but I tried to keep things light and cheerful, reassuring them that I would be back soon and that they would have a fun time with Dad while I was away. It was a flurry of morning activity with checking if my bags packed, last-minute checks, and ensuring everything was in order before we headed out. When we finally arrived at the airport, I felt very excited, of course, but also a bit guilty. Excitement for the vacation and rest I would get with my friend, but guilt for disrupting the kids' routine and making Matt go through the trouble of waking up early and driving us. I kissed my kids goodbye, giving them tight hugs and promising to be back before they knew it. After saying goodbye to my family, my friend and I went through the usual airport routines, checking in our luggage, going through security, and finding our departure gate amidst the busy airport atmosphere. We hustled through the lines, showed our documents, and settled into our seats on the plane. During the flight, we chatted, watched movies, and dozed off, so as to pass the time until our destination approached. The descent was smooth, and soon we were touching down at the new city, ready to begin our vacation. We grabbed our bags and headed into the terminal. During our 2-week getaway in Hawaii, my friend and I had an amazing time. We soaked up the sun, explored the stunning beaches, and dived into the clear ocean waters. We spent lazy afternoons lounging on the sandy shores, building sandcastles and collecting seashells as keepsakes. We even went snorkeling. We also ventured into the lush rainforest for hikes. We attended a traditional luau. It was a cultural delight. We savored delicious local dishes, danced to lively Hawaiian music, and were captivated by the mesmerizing hula performances. We explored the towns and the bustling markets. We treated ourselves to refreshing shaved ice, tasted exotic tropical fruits, and browsed through unique souvenirs to take home a piece of Hawaii with us. So yes, our vacation initially was amazing. During all this time, I kept very low contact with Matt and even the kids because I wanted to just be focused on me for the duration of the vacation. During our final days in Hawaii, my friend and I finally checked off one of our must-dos, hitting up the local club. We'd been talking about it for ages, as we were very excited to find out what the nightlife in Hawaii was like before heading back home. The club was buzzing with energy, the music was pumping, and everyone seemed to be having a blast, including us. We danced our hearts out, soaked in the vibrant atmosphere, and enjoyed every beat. As the night progressed, we decided to take a breather and grab some drinks at the bar. My friend had already hinted that she might end up spending the night with someone, which wasn't surprising given her open relationship. Of course, I couldn't help but feel a bit jealous of her carefree approach to life, especially in contrast to my more reserved nature. My friend was openly flirting and trying to catch the eyes of different people, and like I said before, I was a bit envious. I must have shown it on my face because we then shared a knowing glance. We didn't talk about it at first though, and my friend went back to her flirting until I caught the eyes of a guy that was sitting behind my friend at the bar. He was very cute and looked like a local. He winked at me and it was obvious he was very interested. My friend has noticed my winking, and of course she wanted to know who I was looking at, so she turned around briefly. And that was when she brought up the idea of my experimenting with someone while we were still here, preferably the guy behind me. We argued about it a bit, but I was very interested. I was torn about the whole thing. On one side, I felt this rush of excitement. It would help me break free from the boring routine. But then I knew that I would feel guilty afterwards, and that it would weigh heavily on me. It felt like a whole new opportunity, far from the responsibilities waiting for me at home. My friend was always all about living in the moment, taking chances, and she was very good at convincing me to join her escapades. So yes, I did it. My friend and I switched seats, and I then turned to talk to the guy. I was right, he was a local. He bought my friend and I drinks, and we chatted for a bit before he suggested we dance together. And I agreed, so there I was, swept up in the moment, dancing and laughing, trying to ignore the sensible voice in my head. The local guy was very charming, and I cannot deny how exciting everything was. Well, we danced for a bit and obviously started making out. By that time, I had shut down the sensible voice in my head and was ready to do whatever. I knew I was walking on thin ice. I understood the risks, that I was putting everything I cherished at, but like I said, I had already thrown caution to the wind at that point. The guy then suggested we head back to his, and I disagreed, and told him I would prefer my hotel row. My friend had already left while I was dancing, and she wasn't alone, but we had booked separate rooms, so that wasn't an issue. We got there, and we didn't even waste any time getting intimate. We started making out, and then it continued to full-blown sex. We had sex multiple times that night. I regret it, but I've got to admit it was amazing. The morning after that was when the guilt set in. Guilt was overwhelming, and no matter how much I tried, I just couldn't shake off the feeling of shame. Thankfully, the stranger had left before I even woke up. but the regret was eating me up inside. Still, I tried to justify it to myself, thinking that what my husband didn't know wouldn't hurt him. I told myself that now that I had satisfied my curiosity, I would focus on fixing things with Matt and being there for my kids. I no longer had the urge for an open relationship, so that meant I would no longer pester Matt about it. 2 days left until we had to go back home, and my friend and I spent our last days exploring and shopping. We briefly talked about the wild night at the club, and I admitted that I enjoyed it, but I knew it was a one-time thing. I missed Matt and the kids like crazy, so I called them to express how much I missed them and couldn't wait to be back home with them. After our vacation in Hawaii, coming back home was a mix of emotions. I missed the beautiful beaches and the carefree vibe of the island, but I was also eager to be back with my family. Reuniting with Matt and the kids was such a warm feeling. It reminded me of what truly mattered in life. My friend and I had made a pact that what happened in Hawaii would stay there, a secret buried deep in our heart. The first few days back, I threw myself into making things right. I stopped nagging Matt about our issues and instead focused on showing him love and appreciation. I worked hard on our relationship and started putting in extra effort to engage in meaningful conversations, be extremely friendly, and even rekindle our intimacy. I suggested a date night for us during the weekend, and to my delight, Matt was on board. It felt like we were reconnecting, finding our way back to each other after the issues we had been through. Matt seemed happy, and I was hopeful that we were on the path to healing our relationship. Yesterday evening started off with a tense vibe. Matt had mentioned earlier that he'd be working late due to overtime, so I expected him to arrive home late. When he finally got back, well past dinner time, I could sense that something was wrong. He seemed distant and lost in thought. I tried to start a conversation, but he brushed off my attempts. Even when I suggested he eat something first, he declined and headed straight for a shower. It felt like a storm was brewing, and I knew that something was wrong. After his shower, Matt approached me with a serious look in his eyes that made me nervous. He asked if we could talk calmly without any yelling because of the kids sleeping, and I agreed. We sat down in the living room. Then he asked me straight up if I had cheated on him during our vacation. The question caught me off guard. I was stunned and at a loss for words. I quickly realized that my best friend had betrayed me by spilling the beans to Matt. Anger started boiling inside me, directed at both myself and my friend for putting me in this mess. I started pleading with Matt. I was still speaking in hushed tones to avoid waking the kids. I tried to explain that it was a drunken mistake. I asked for forgiveness with every ounce of sincerity I could muster. But Matt stayed silent. He looked so disappointed and hurt. Then Matt laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. It was obviously laced with bitterness and disbelief. He pointed out that cheating wasn't a slip-up. It was a conscious decision. Then he calmly stated that he needed time away. He packed a few things and left, rejecting any attempts for me to reach out, touch, or console him. The night was very rough, and I barely got any sleep. I felt torn between wanting to call my friend to vent and wanting to shut her out completely. This morning was chaotic, too. The kids were confused about why their dad wasn't there as usual. I tried to explain it away, saying he had to leave early for something urgent. So I'm here seeking advice, guidance, and maybe even a bit of understanding. I know I messed up, and I'm struggling with immense guilt and remorse. I want to make things right, to earn back Matt's trust and rebuild what we've lost. So Reddit, if you've been through something similar or have any wisdom to share, I'm all ears. Update. Hey Reddit, it's only been a few hours since my last post and the response has been overwhelming. I've received a mix of rude, weird, and harsh comments, but among those, there were also some kind and supportive messages. Many of you reached out via DMs asking for updates, so here I am. I didn't anticipate my post gaining this much attention, so I'll just address a few common questions and share the little updates I have. Firstly, many of you suggested sending a simple text to my friend to confirm if she was the one who told my husband, without going into a rant. I understand the logic behind this, as ultimately, I made the choice to cheat, which led to this situation. Regarding legal advice, I appreciate the offers, but I'm not actively seeking legal help at the moment. I believe my husband and I can work through this without legal intervention. Speaking of my husband, he's still not home, which isn't surprising since he's likely at work. I did receive numerous messages from my mother-in-law expressing her disappointment and anger about the situation. She even tried calling me, but I haven't responded yet because I'm unsure of what to say. But now I know that my husband most likely spent the night at his mom's house and headed to work from there. I'm considering reaching out to my parents and siblings to update them on what's happening, but I haven't done so yet. My initial hope was to resolve this privately between my husband and me, but it seems like that might not be possible anymore. That's all for now. I want to express my gratitude to those who have been understanding and supportive in their comments. I really appreciate you all. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been about 2 days since my last post and I need to vent and update you all on what's been happening. Currently, I'm staying at my parents' house, which wasn't exactly my plan, and let me tell y'all it has been rough. So my husband finally returned home from work that evening. The kids were very happy to see him, but his behavior towards me was cold. He didn't eat the meal I had cooked, which I understood given the whole shit show. After spending some time with the kids, he asked me to have a serious talk. Of course, I braced myself for what was coming. I genuinely thought he was going to suggest we get couples counseling or maybe even take a break. But to my shock and dismay, he told me that he had spent the night at his mom's place and that he had thought about it a lot and decided that we should get a divorce. I was devastated and started crying, but he urged me to be quiet so as not to wake the kids. He gave me that night to stay, but the next morning he wanted me out of the house. He had even taken the day off work to supervise my departure. I tried to reason with him, pleading that he was throwing away our years of love over one mistake, but he was stubborn. He told me that I had crossed the one boundary he had clearly set, and forgiveness was just not possible. He then told me that I would have to leave the kids, and of course I refused. We argued, and I insisted on taking the kids with me. However, he reminded me that they were closer to him and wouldn't want to leave. Well, reluctantly, I had to agree, because I also realized that disrupting their lives further wouldn't be fair to them. I also reached out to my friend who was shocked and clarified that she hadn't told my husband, but she did tell her husband. So it was likely her husband who told mine. She did tell me, though, that she was going to confront her husband and she would get back to me. The next morning, I messaged my parents for help with moving out. I couldn't take any cars since they all belonged to my husband. After our oldest went to daycare, my husband did explain to him that I would be away for a while so he wouldn't be too shocked when he came back and didn't meet me. It broke my heart to leave. I even cried, hoping my tears would change his mind. But nope, it didn't sway him. All he told me was to stop crying so our youngest wouldn't hear me. Now I'm at my parents' place, and I feel so distraught and uncertain about the future. I don't want a divorce and hope there's a way to mend things with my husband. However, if it comes to that, I'm worried about the custody of the kids and what I might get from the divorce settlement. My parents have promised to intervene once things have calmed down a bit, but right now I'm just hoping for a miracle. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, about a month and a week, I think. I kind of forgot to update you all as I logged out for a bit because the negative comments were very overwhelming. But I remembered this app today and realized I owed you guys an update. So here it goes. First things first, my husband and I are definitely getting a divorce. My parents tried to organize an intervention and even tried to get my mother-in-law to participate, but she declined. She said she feels that my husband shouldn't forgive me for what happened, and that cheating was a huge betrayal of trust. It ended up being just my parents and me. We waited until the evening when we knew my husband would be back from work and likely at home. We didn't tell him we were coming over because we knew he would prefer us not to. In fact, I'm surprised my mother-in-law didn't call ahead and warn my husband before we came. When we arrived, he was genuinely surprised to see us. He let us in, and the kids were thrilled to see me. My husband allows me to video call with them regularly, and even let me take them to my parents' house for a weekend. However, it's not the same as being with them in person every day, waking up to them, and spending every minute with them. We had to wait until my husband put the kids to bed before we could talk, and let me tell y'all, it amounted to nothing. We tried everything to convince him, but he didn't budge. He said we've argued about this issue endlessly, and my actions were the final straw. He said he was sorry, but made it clear that he couldn't forgive me. My parents even suggested marriage counseling, but Matt still refused. He said that no amount of counseling would make him forgive me, or could make him change his mind. He mentioned that he's reducing his work hours to spend more time with the kids, and would be seeking therapy for them to cope with the changes that were happening, especially with us not living together anymore. Ultimately, he asked us to leave as he wanted an early night's rest. He told me to expect divorce papers very soon, and that I should have even got served a while ago, but he had been a bit busy. My friend also got back to me, and yes, her husband had been the one to tell mine. She said he did it because he felt my husband deserved the truth. She apologized, but what will an apology do? Like, what good was an apology now that everything had fallen apart? I've already lost my marriage. My husband is leaving me, and it's partly her fault because she convinced me in the first place. I will be keeping her at an arm's length from now on. Update. Hey Reddit fams, so it finally hit me. Those divorce papers landed in my hands after what feels like forever. I gotta give props to all the supportive comments, especially the ones lifting me up. I really appreciate you all. But some of y'all have been really rude and harsh. A lot said things like they saw it coming from a mile away, and that I was very delusional. I really don't appreciate that, but I do kind of understand why you would think that. I've been trying my best to process and come to terms with everything. I will most definitely be going to therapy after this. I know there's a tough road ahead, including court proceedings and seeking legal counsel. I'm fully aware that my chances aren't great given the circumstances. I cheated, we're newly married, Matt owns the house, and he even has a stable and well-paying job, so he will most likely be getting custody. I messed up, plain and simple, but you know what? I'm not giving up. I'm diving back into the workforce. I'm soon going to start job hunting to get myself back on track financially. I know that it's going to be a bumpy ride. I've been out of work for a very long time, but I'm ready to face it and make sure I keep moving forward no matter how hard it gets. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since I last updated. Honestly, I haven't had the energy to come back to this app until now. So here's what's been going on. I went to court and, well, it didn't go as I hoped. A lot of the predictions from you guys turned out to be true, so I guess I have to give credit where it's due. I lost custody of the kids, which was really tough, but I did manage to secure visitation rights, so that's a small relief. On the financial side, things are a bit mixed. I did get alimony, which helps cover some expenses, but I didn't get the house. The alimony isn't a huge amount, but it's enough to get by for now as I continue my job search. Speaking of which, finding a job has been much harder than I anticipated. It's been a very frustrating journey, and at one time I even did give up. However, I've recently started getting back into the job hunt. I'm exploring remote work options and considering going back to college to improve my prospects and my opportunities. It's a very challenging road ahead, but I'm trying to stay positive and focused on rebuilding my life. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, but I thought I'd drop in with a little update on how things have been going. This will probably be my last one. Unfortunately, I couldn't go back to college because neither I nor my parents could afford it. I did ask Matt for help, but he refused, which added to our ongoing disagreements. Lately, he's been making decisions without consulting me and hasn't allowed me to come over to the house. On the work front, I've started a minimum wage job. It's not much in terms of pay, but I see it as a temporary step. My goal is to move out soon, possibly find a roommate to share expenses with. The housing situation is tough, though, with prices skyrocketing due to the housing crisis. My friend did try to reach out to me, but I made the decision not to entertain her attempts to connect. Matt has started dating again. I haven't been in touch with a lot of our mutual friends, but the few that I occasionally speak to mentioned he's been going on a few dates. It stung, you know. It's only been a few months and I still love him. Part of me hoped time would heal things and maybe we'd find our way back together, but that seems like wishful thinking now. I've been considering legal options like suing for custody maybe in a few years' time when I've saved enough money and am in a better place. But realistically, I know it's an uphill battle, plus I also know the kids will always pick their dad over me. Matt has always been the most understanding parent and the one that just vibed with them. To distract myself and stay healthy, I've gotten back into fitness and cooking. It's a way to channel my emotions and regain some control. But I can't deny that I still miss Matt a lot. Taking life one day at a time is my mantra these days. The online attention has also been really overwhelming. These posts blew up more than I expected, and seeing my story on TikTok and YouTube was uncomfortable. I appreciate the supportive comments, though. They've been a lifeline. Of course, there have also been very rude and hurtful ones. I've decided this will probably be my last update here. I'm planning to delete this account and step away from social media for a while. Therapy is something I need but can't afford yet. It's on my list once I'm financially stable. Thanks for all the kind words and understanding. It's been quite a wild journey, and I appreciate the support I've received from this community.